Hello, my name is Tim, and we are in Tübingen, Germany, to visit the Paleontology Collection at the university. Now, this is one of the most amazing university collections in the world, and we're here to meet the curator and to kind of get a brief overview of the collection and to see if we can get a quick tour.
So the collection consists basically of two major parts. So one is the local paleontology coming from the Swabian area, and many very important specimens come from there. And part of our collection is local paleontology. And the other part is international paleontology, which is related to all the scientists who brought all this material here over all the decades that they were working here, like von Hühne, who collected these saurian-like animals, or also some paleontologists going, I don't know, to Pakistan to get some very special ammonites from there. And so from all over the world we have good material. It's a very comprehensive, nice collection. We have about 1 million objects, so this is quite large for a university paleontology collection. So we call ourselves always the biggest collections of this kind in the world. So which is a kind of beginning of the whole story. Here the stratigraphische Saal. So stratigraphy is the doctrine of layers. And when you look here, we have very old vitrines. We see different specimens, and every vitrine corresponds to a different layer in Earth history. So we begin here in the Precambrium, and we end up in the Quaternary, which is over there. And then we also enter here this wonderful little corner, which is our historical corner, where kids can play with some microscopic issues. They can read some literature and so on. And here you see the founder of our institute. It's Friedrich August Quenstedt, who was working here for almost 70 years and collected more than 7,000 specimens. So here this is one specimen I really love to show. It is from the Precambrium. So this was the time when the first life on Earth was present, and you see red banded stone. And red banded means, so if something is red, that it means there was oxygen, and oxygen can only be produced by organisms. And so most likely there were bacteria producing something, and then the ferrum around this, the iron around this oxygenized, and then we have these red layers. So this is an indication for life. Actually, this is quite not that spectacular at a first glance, but if you look into detail, this is some plate which is based from the soil of the ocean, and you see strange structures. And Tübingen is very famous for research on these structures. We call this paleoichnology, so the traces in the mud basically, which were fossilized. And these are traces of trilobite, so very ancient animals which were walking like this and leaving this trace, and they were just walking around. And this looks like paleo art. There was one professor, Adolf Seilacher, who is extremely famous. He was also professor at Yale University for more than 15 years. And he invented this whole research area. And the building was basically built around the specimen. So the height of the room is exactly 4.60 meters, so fitting to the size of the specimen. And what we have here, if we come closer, you see something round here and several arms. And these arms actually belong to a stick like this. So this is the rest of the body, so a very long one. And this looks like a flower. It's a sea lily, and a sea lily is actually very closely related to sea stars and sea urchins. And they always have this pentameric symmetry, so 5 parts of their body, and or a multiplication of this. So we have like 20 or 25, 30 arms. And they were animals like sea urchins or sea stars, and they were sitting somewhere fixed to the ground and then with their arms filtrating the water. So this is what they did. And it looks like a plant, but it's not a plant, it's an animal.
Dr. Wernberg went on to explain that this colony of sea lilies was actually attached to a log that was floating in the ocean. Eventually, the log became waterlogged, sank, and dragged the sea lilies down to the seafloor with it. About 180 million years ago, this part of Germany was covered by an ocean. The lower levels of this ocean lacked oxygen, and the bottom was cold and muddy. So when a creature died and settled on the bottom, it wasn't subject to predators and was able to be covered by organic matter that helped preserve many of its unique features and even soft tissues. Now, this is what happened with the ichthyosaurs. They died, settled on the bottom, and a chemical process transformed them into a fossil. Now, Dr. Wernberg goes on to explain.
So these specimens could be perfectly preserved. We call this shales, or black shales. This means anoxic environment, and all the specimens are perfectly preserved, including also the ichthyosaurs, the marine reptiles, and so on. So we are really lucky to have. Something which we call Konzentrat, Lagerstätte. So it's basically concentrated, so every specimen together. And meaning that there are several specimens from of different ontogenetic stages of different species, and they are all washed together. Maybe underwater there was a small cave or so, and everything was washed inside. And this is quite interesting because we see small specimens, big specimens, different ontogenetic series. Here different species compared to this one. So different relatives of ammonites, extinct Mesozoic mollusk species. So this is really amazing. Maybe the most important ones are ichthyosaurs, so fish-like reptiles, which secondarily went into water. So they are reptiles originally adapted to land, but then they went into water, had the stream-like body shape with the forearms and hind limbs modified to fins. And most likely these animals also gave birth because they were not strong enough to walk on land to hide their eggs. So we know that they were viviparous, so they gave living. And here are some of the ichthyosaurs from the surroundings of Tübingen. And here's one very famous specimen where you still see the soft tissue preserved. So in the past, people were wondering why the tail had this strange kink. They thought it was some deformation of stone, but at the end they realized it's for stabilizing the ventral wing or lobe of the hind fin. That's quite interesting. Researchers took samples and they were especially focusing on the melanocytes, so where the coloration is in the cells, and they realized that the back of the body was blackish. Because of, I mean, we don't see it now, but you can see it under the microscope and some special light. And then they realized even that the belly was white, and then they had stripes on the side like a zebra also.
Really?
Right, and this is like a mimicry, so they are, nobody sees them if they are in this lighting
So
environment. So
if
this is perfect. And if a pterosaur, a flying reptile, was looking from the top to the sea, they didn't see it because of the blackish back. And when a predator from the below came, then they only saw the white belly and the white heaven. So they were perfectly
camouflaged.
So, right.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Most likely they were warm-blooded because of the body mass, first of all, and also if you live. So we know that they have extremely large eyes, very big sclera, so bones in the eyes, which all reptiles actually have. We as humans, as mammals, lost them. But this was to stand the pressure in very deep seas, so they were hunting for ammonites everywhere. And that means if you live and hunt very deep in the ocean, there's a lot of pressure, of course, first of all, but it's extremely cold also, and to survive they for sure had a big fat skin and so on. And and it is also known that most of them gave birth. So they didn't lay eggs anymore. So because, I mean, this animal was not able to walk on land, but the ancestors were reptiles who laying eggs, and so in evolution they evolved giving birth. And this is a physiological process which needs a lot of energy and internal heat, let's say, to warm the baby, so to say, with the fetuses, and for this also a homogeneous temperature, high temperature is quite plausible. Here we have two specimens which belong to the species Dinopterygius, Quadriciscus and Triciscus. These are small anatomical details, how to distinguish them. But what is important in these ichthyosaurs, in these fish saurians or fish reptiles, is first of all that they are perfectly adapted to swimming underwater. So they have a stream-like body, very small, very peak-like jaws, and also the body looks like a fish basically. And the forelimbs are formed as fins, as you see here. Then we have the rib cage, and inside the rib cage we have different things. First of all, we have this blackish stuff here, which is gut and stomach content. So we see some little pieces we can analyze. Then we know that they ate different marine soft tissue invertebrate species. But what is most important, if you look further back in the rib cage, you see some strange bones here and there, and you see a big roundish thing, and then it continues here, and you already see there are strange things which look like vertebrae, and here they dissolve in a way. So this is basically the head. So here's the jaw, the eye, and this is the body, and over there is the king of a fetus, a late embryo of the same species. So you see these concave vertebrae here. You see all these little concave things. They are basically the same as here in the adult. There you also see these concave vertebrae. So this is a clear indication. Also the mother has very big eyes and these jaws, so it looks like this embryo here. And if you look at this specimen, there's a very similar, big head, big eyes, forelimbs and so on, some gut content. And here you see a kink in the vertebrae of an embryo. And here the vertebral column continues. And there's the big eye of the specimen, and the jaws are looking out of the mother, the uterus, so it looks out and is in the process of being born. As I told you before, these specimens actually belong to reptiles. So reptiles originally laid eggs. But as they went to water, it's complicated to always find land, and also the limbs are so modified that they cannot really walk. Even in marine turtles nowadays, it's very hard, and even they more reduced the limbs for walking on land. So they developed giving birth to the animals. And if you maybe there will be some zoos in the US for sure where you can see dolphins springing and so on. But if you ever watch a dolphin giving birth, what you see is that the mother suddenly has two tails. So its own tail and the tail of the baby coming out. And then it takes some time, and at the end the head is born last. And then the mother helps the baby to come into the surface and to breathe and so on. And most likely this happened also here, because when you are born with the head first and it takes some time to give birth, the baby would die because wouldn't be able to breathe. They, of course, like all reptiles, have to breathe via the lungs, so they have to breathe atmospheric oxygen. They are not fish, do not have gills. And this guy is born head first, which shows us that it died during the birth process. So most likely it, And then the mother was full of blood and she also died. So this. You see some marine reptiles coming from the UK, and they are very beautiful in their shape, in their anatomy. And actually it was Professor von Hühne who invented a new method how to arrange these old bones, because in the past, before von Hühne, so before the beginning of the 20th century, people have made core drills inside the bones to just stick it on some steel to just be on display. But he made something like a steel core set and put all the bones on the top of the core set. So we now, as scientists, we can easily go there, take the bones out, put them back, and we can easily analyze them, and the bones are still in shape, so without any holes, and that is really interesting. And he was also very interested in biology. We know this from his publications and also his original library, where he made some comments on biological aspects. And if you look at this specimen, for example, you can nicely see the mobility inside the neck. So this is very fine anatomy arranged. So he was really interested in this and made some good progress. So nowadays we still make research on this specimen, and we are always amazed what this guy already did. And we always build on the shoulders of our ancestors in a way. Anatomist, so yeah, so these are the secret samples of Institute. It took me several weeks at the beginning to find my way through the Institute and to remember. And also here we have several specimens on the wall because we have no space. So there are different invertebrates cut and showing different chambers of their body and stuff like this. So quite interesting. Hey. Here's another fish saurian. Mal ganz kurz hier. So,
Oh my goodness.
here we are now in the archive of our museum, of our collection, and we call this compactors because the company which made these shelves was called compactors, and you have several shelves with specimens inside. We have several thousand such drawers, and we organize our specimens in these rows. And for example, I just open any drawer like this, and here you see the fossils, really amazing material. We document old pieces of paper where people described this in the past, and here we have a picture from a old exhibition. So the specimen was on display before. We don't throw this away, we just document this, and yeah, this is full of amazing material. But this is only for scientists, so people who want to study this. I mean, of course, some specimens are good for display, some not, but scientifically, most of them are very important. And so, yeah, it's always good to see some big skulls. Right, can I show you? Yeah, so and here we have, for example, different specimens which were also published by another curator who lived several years ago, Frank Westphal, and he published on material from a place nearby. And here you see some bones of a frog, for example, or some I don't know what this is here. So many different things, and we always have such numbers here, which means we have to document everything in detail. We have a catalog where we summarize all the information. Then we have the publication from this professor, and this is all put together. Yeah, I think it's always very impressive to see all this, and we have 27 such rows full of material. This is one of the most beautiful ones. So very differentiated skull with many different bars, and here teeth, which are teeth rows for grasping. So very interesting.
What is it
Perhaps a
from?
plant eater?
What is it from?
This will be from Africa, I guess. Oh no, it's Brazil this time.
Okay.
Yeah. So Professor von Hühne also was in Brazil, and he made several excavations and finding a lot of new species which nobody ever saw before.
This is one tooth? No.
This is left and right tooth, so
Oh, wow.
together forming one beak-like
Oh my gosh.
structure
Okay.
for, I don't know. Here is the old professor from Tübingen, who's sitting on his writing papers, and he is out in the field digging for some fossils in South America.